My roommate stole my idea, then she went viral, until I found her secret account. I felt the world tilt beneath my feet when I stumbled across that video. It was my idea, my concept, and yet there it was posted by my roommate, Sarah, with her face plastered all over it. Just a week ago, I had shared my vision with her over coffee, excitedly sketching out plans for a creative video that I believe could go viral. The shock settled into a cold knot in my stomach as I watched the views climb higher and higher. The comments flooded in, praising her for her originality and creativity, while I sat there, paralyzed by betrayal. How did she do this? We had always been supportive of each other's dreams, or so I thought. When I confronted her about it later that evening, she brushed it off with a laugh, claiming it was merely a coincidence. I wanted to scream, to shake her, and demand the truth, but I held back. Instead, I forced a smile and nodded, feeling the weight of my disappointment settle deeper. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and anger. I tried to distract myself with work, but every time I scrolled through social media, there was Sarah's video, trending and celebrated. I felt like a ghost in my own life, watching someone else bask in the glow of my creativity. As the week progressed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Sarah's demeanor had changed. She was more confident, almost cocky, and I couldn't help but notice her sudden increase in income. I overheard her chatting with friends about brand deals and sponsorships, things I had only dreamed of discussing myself. The more I observed, the more my suspicion grew. I had to know how she was managing all this. It felt like I was on the outside looking in, and I couldn't bear it. I decided to dig deeper, starting with her social media accounts, but what I found was beyond anything I could have imagined. One evening, after she had gone out with friends, I sat down at her laptop. It was risky, but I needed answers. I opened her social media accounts, and there it was, a hidden profile separate from her main one, dedicated entirely to the video that was supposed to be mine. My heart raced as I clicked through the posts, each one more blatant than the last. She was monetizing my idea, reaping the benefits while I sat in silence. I felt a mix of rage and helplessness wash over me. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was theft. I was torn between confronting her again and gathering evidence to expose her deceit. I closed the laptop, my mind racing with thoughts. If I wanted to confront her, I needed to be prepared. I couldn't just accuse her without proof. I decided to take a step back, observe her more closely, and see if I could catch her in the act of promoting the video further. The next few days were torturous. I watched as she continued to post updates, flaunting her newfound lifestyle while I remained in the shadows, grappling with my feelings. Every laugh she shared with friends felt like a dagger in my heart. Each smile a reminder of the betrayal. I began to keep a journal, documenting everything I could find about her activities. I noted the time she was out late, the brands she mentioned, and the followers she was gaining. It was a meticulous process, but I needed to connect the dots and build a case against her. As I pieced together the timeline, I started to feel a strange sense of empowerment. I wasn't just going to let this slide. I wanted to reclaim my idea, my voice, and show everyone the truth behind Sarah's rise to fame. But the more I dug, the more complicated things became. I discovered that Sarah had partnered with influencers I had admired for years, people who were now endorsing her content. It made my blood boil to think they were praising her for something that was never hers to begin with. I needed to act, but how could I expose her without putting myself at risk? Each day felt like a battle, the tension between us palpable. Sarah was blissfully unaware of my investigation, and I had to keep it that way. I needed to be smart about this to play my cards right. I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. I had to stay focused. With each passing moment, the idea of confronting her grew more daunting. What if she denied everything again? What if she turned the tables on me? I had to be prepared for anything, and that meant gathering more evidence. I couldn't let her get away with this. As I sat in my room, the weight of the situation pressing down on me, I made a decision. I would confront her, but not until I had everything I needed. I would show her that I wasn't just a victim in this story. I was ready to fight back. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I oscillated between anger and confusion, replaying our conversations over and over in my head. Each time, I could hear her laughter, her feigned enthusiasm for my idea, and it twisted my gut. I was losing my mind, feeling like I was the only one stuck in this nightmare while she was out there thriving, seemingly without a care in the world. I tried to focus on my work, but the vibrant colors of my creativity felt muted. My usual flow of ideas was replaced by a gnawing suspicion that wouldn't let go. I found myself scrolling through her social media, watching as her follower count soared and her posts became increasingly polished. Each like and comment felt like a dagger, a reminder of the betrayal I had yet to confront. Then, one evening, I stumbled upon a post that made my heart race. It was a video of her cooking a recipe that I had shared with her just weeks before. The way she presented it, with the same quirky style I had envisioned, made my blood boil. It was as if she was mocking me, flaunting my creativity while I sat in silence, powerless to stop it. I decided to dig deeper. If she could monetize my idea without a second thought, I needed to understand how far this had gone. Late at night, I began searching for any clues that might lead me to the truth. I created a fake account, something anonymous, to observe her activities without raising suspicion. I felt like a detective in a bad movie, but the urgency of the situation left me no choice. Days turned into weeks, and I watched her life transform. New clothes, fancy dinners, and trips to places I could only dream of. Each post was a reminder of the life I could have had if I had only been the one to share my idea first. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being erased from my own narrative, as if she had stolen not just my idea, but a piece of my identity. I began to notice inconsistencies in her stories. One day, she would mention a brand deal that seemed too good to be true, and the next, she'd casually drop a reference to a sponsorship that I had never heard of. My gut twisted at the thought of her profiting from something that was mine. I needed proof, something concrete to show her that I wasn't just being paranoid. It was during one of those late-night scrolls that I found her hidden account. It was a social media platform I had overlooked, one where she posted more raw and unedited content. I could hardly believe my eyes as I watched her videos, each one echoing my original ideas. It was a treasure trove of evidence, a digital trail leading straight back to the moment I had shared my concept with her. The rush of discovery was intoxicating, but it was laced with a bitter aftertaste. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring down into the abyss of what this could mean for our friendship. I had hoped that she would realize her mistake and come clean, but now it was clear that I couldn't rely on her conscience. This was about survival now, and I had to prepare myself for the fallout. With every video I watched, I felt a mix of rage and determination swell within me. I couldn't let her get away with this, not without a fight. I began documenting everything, taking screenshots, saving links, and compiling notes on the timeline of events. Each piece of evidence felt like a small victory, a step closer to reclaiming my narrative. As I pieced together the timeline, I noticed something else. She had started to distance herself from me, canceling plans and being evasive when I brought up topics related to social media. It was as if she knew I was onto her and was preparing for the inevitable confrontation. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and palpable, like a storm waiting to break. The days dragged on, and I felt the pressure mounting. I had to confront her soon, but I wanted to be sure I had everything lined up perfectly. I didn't want to just accuse her. I wanted to lay out the facts to show her that I wasn't going to back down. It was a game of chess, and I was determined to be the one who emerged victorious. Then one night I caught her in a lie. She casually mentioned a new collaboration that didn't add up with what I had seen on her hidden account. My heart raced as I realized she was trying to cover her tracks, and it sent a chill down my spine. I had all the evidence I needed, but I still felt a flicker of doubt. What if she had a way to twist the narrative, to make me look like the villain in this story? I spent that night tossing and turning, the weight of my discovery pressing down on me. I could either let her continue to thrive on my ideas, or take the plunge and expose her. I knew the choice I had to make, but the fear of losing our friendship, of tearing apart the life we had built together, gnawed at me. But I had to remind myself, this wasn't just about friendship, it was about justice. As dawn broke, I felt a newfound resolve. I would confront her, not just for me, but for every creative soul who had ever been silenced. I wouldn't let her deception go unchallenged. I would gather my evidence, and when the time was right, I would make sure the truth came out. I was ready to step into the light, no matter the cost. As the days passed, my resolve only deepened. I started to notice how different she had become, almost overnight. The casual thrift store finds she used to wear were replaced by trendy outfits, and the cluttered kitchen we used to share was now stocked with gourmet ingredients. Her social media accounts buzzed with new followers, and the comments poured in like a river of admiration for her supposed creativity, while I felt like a ghost in my own home. I began to piece together the timeline, retracing my steps to the night I first shared my idea with her. The way she had leaned in, nodding enthusiastically, felt like a betrayal now. I could almost hear her laughter echoing in my mind, a sound that had once brought comfort, but now twisted into something sinister. I had to find a way to uncover the truth behind her newfound success, so I started my investigation quietly, avoiding any direct confrontation. The first thing I did was revisit her social media accounts. I scrolled through her posts, analyzing the content for anything that resembled my original idea. It was hard to miss the viral video she had posted. The comments were filled with praise for her brilliant concept. My stomach churned as I realized the only thing she had done differently was add her own twist, something trivial that didn't change the essence of what I'd shared with her. It was infuriating to see her basking in the spotlight while I was left in the shadows. I took a deep breath and decided to dig deeper. Late at night, when she was asleep, I turned on my laptop and started searching for any hidden accounts. I knew she was savvy enough to have more than one platform, especially if she was monetizing her content. After a few hours of sifting through links and hashtags, I stumbled upon a lesser-known account that had only a few hundred followers. The profile picture was vague, but the content? It was all too familiar. The account was a treasure trove of videos, each one echoing my original concept. I felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with disbelief as I watched her posts. She had been using a different name, but the style, the tone, even the jokes were unmistakably mine. I could see the progression in her content, each video more polished than the last, each one making a profit through ads and sponsorships. I was enraged, yet oddly relieved. I had found the evidence I needed. With my heart racing, I began taking screenshots of everything. I knew I had to document this meticulously. It would be my lifeline when I finally confronted her. I saved each video, noting the dates they were posted and comparing them to the night I shared my idea with her. It was becoming clearer that this was no coincidence. She had stolen my creativity and was thriving off it, and I was determined to ensure she wouldn't get away with it. I started to connect the dots further. I reached out to a few friends who had seen my original concept and asked them if they had noticed anything unusual about her posts. Their responses were telling. They had commented on how similar her content was to mine, but they had brushed it off as a coincidence. I felt a surge of frustration. How could they not see what was happening? I needed to make them understand before it was too late. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, poring over my notes, she walked in, her phone glued to her hand. I could feel the tension in the air, an unspoken battle between us. She casually mentioned how her latest video was doing even better than the last, and I felt my stomach twist. I forced a smile, but inside I was seething. How could she flaunt her success when it was built on my foundation? I knew I had to act, but I needed more proof. I began researching how to report stolen content online, familiarizing myself with the process. I wanted to be armed with every piece of evidence possible before I took the plunge. It was empowering to think about how I could turn the tables, to not just reclaim my idea, but to expose her for the fraud she was becoming. As I gathered more information, I started thinking about the best way to approach this confrontation. Should I wait for a big social gathering where I could have an audience? Or would it be more effective to confront her in private first? Each option had its risks, and I weighed them carefully. The thought of her denying everything again made my blood boil, but I had to be strategic. I decided to invite a few friends over for dinner, a casual setting that would allow me to gauge their reactions when I revealed the truth. I planned to drop hints throughout the evening, creating a narrative that would lead to the big reveal. I could almost see the look on her face when she realized I was onto her. It was a small comfort, but I knew I had to stay focused on the goal. As the day approached, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. The closer I got to the confrontation, the more I realized how much I had invested in this. It wasn't just about the idea. It was about my integrity, my passion for creativity, and my right to be recognized for my work. I wanted to reclaim my voice in a world that often silenced those who were taken advantage of. I started drafting a speech in my head, a way to articulate my feelings without losing my composure. I envisioned the moment she would realize the gravity of her actions, the shock that would ripple through the room. I rehearsed it in front of the mirror, tried to perfect my tone and delivery. I couldn't afford to falter. This was my moment to shine, even in the midst of darkness. In the days leading up to the dinner, I kept my distance from her, letting the tension simmer. I noticed her becoming more secretive, her phone always in her hand, her eyes darting away when I walked into the room. It was a strange kind of satisfaction, knowing that I was onto her while she remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I was ready to bring it all to light. The night of the dinner arrived, and I felt a mix of nerves and determination. I had invited a couple of friends who were familiar with my original idea, hoping their presence would lend weight to my words. As I set the table, I glanced at her, who was busy scrolling through her phone, seemingly oblivious to the chaos that was about to unfold. Little did she know, the truth was about to come crashing down. As the evening progressed, I could feel the tension in the air thickening like fog. My friends chatted amiably, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I caught a glimpse of my roommate, laughing a little too loudly at something on her phone, and I couldn't help but feel a wave of resentment wash over me. This was the same person who had taken my idea and turned it into her own success, and now she was pretending everything was normal. Midway through dinner, I decided to subtly shift the conversation towards social media. Have you guys seen any cool videos lately? You know, the ones that go viral overnight. I asked, trying to gauge my roommate's reaction. Her eyes flickered up from her phone, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of unease cross her face. But she quickly recovered, launching into a story about a trending dance challenge, as if she hadn't just robbed me of my creativity. After dinner, while my friends mingled in the living room, I excused myself to the kitchen, pretending to tidy up. My heart raced as I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my notes to revisit the original concept I had shared with her. It was a detailed plan, filled with sketches and ideas I had poured my soul into. My gut twisted as I compared it to her viral video. The similarities were undeniable. The color scheme, the music, even the pacing, it was all there, and she had made her own. I felt a surge of anger as I realized how meticulously she had copied my work. The more I thought about it, the more my stomach churned. She had monetized my idea without a second thought, and here I was, the ghost of my own creativity, left to clean up the pieces. I needed to gather more evidence, something concrete that would expose her in front of our friends, but I couldn't act rashly. I had to be strategic. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with plans and possibilities. I decided to take a closer look at her social media accounts the next day, hoping to find something that would help me make my case. As dawn broke, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't just going to let this slide. I was going to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I needed to confront her, but I also needed to have my facts straight. The next afternoon, I casually asked her about her latest video. "You really blew up with that one. How did you come up with it?" I forced a smile, hoping to catch her off guard. Her response was immediate, filled with rehearsed enthusiasm. "Oh, just some random inspiration. You know how it is." I noticed the way her eyes darted away, a small tell that something was off. It was a slight crack in her facade, but I needed more. After she left for a workout, I took the opportunity to dig deeper. I logged into her hidden social media account, the one I had stumbled upon earlier. It was a treasure trove of content that mirrored my original idea, but she had cleverly branded it as her own. Each post was meticulously crafted, and the comments were filled with praise for her unique creativity. My heart sank further as I realized the extent of her deception. This was not just a coincidence. It was a calculated move. I began taking screenshots, documenting everything I could find that linked her success to my idea. Each image felt like a small victory, but the weight of the situation pressed heavily on my shoulders. I knew I had to confront her soon, but I wanted to make sure I had all my ducks in a row. I couldn't risk her dismissing my claims as jealousy or paranoia. I needed to present her with undeniable proof. The pressure of my secret investigation was starting to take a toll on me. I felt like I was living a double life, hiding my intentions from someone I once considered a close friend. My friends began to notice my distracted demeanor, and I brushed off their concerns with vague excuses. I couldn't let them know the truth just yet. It would only complicate things further. I needed to keep my focus sharp. Then, as if the universe was throwing me a bone, I received a notification. One of my friends had tagged me in a post about a local influencer meetup. The timing was perfect. This could be the opportunity one needed to gather more intel on my roommate's connections and see how deeper deception really ran. I quickly RSVP'd, feeling a mix of excitement and dread. I had to tread carefully, but I could feel the walls closing in around her. As the meetup approached, I started to feel a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. I knew I was getting closer to the truth, but I also feared the confrontation that lay ahead. Would I be able to expose her in front of everyone? Would she deny it all and twist the narrative against me? I had to be prepared for any outcome. The stakes were rising, and I could feel the pressure mounting. That evening, as I got ready for the meetup, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap of my own making. I had to remind myself that this was about more than just a video. It was about integrity and respect for my work. I took a deep breath, looking in the mirror, and steeled myself for what was to come. I was ready to face her, armed with the truth and a determination that burned bright within me. I arrived at the venue, a trendy cafe buzzing with energy. My friends are already there, chatting and laughing, but my eyes scanned the room for her. I spotted her across the crowd, mingling effortlessly with others, her smile radiant and disarming. It made my blood boil. I knew I had to confront her soon, but I also had to be smart about it. I couldn't just rush in blindly. I needed to wait for the right moment. As I sipped my drink, I overheard snippets of conversation around me, influencers discussing their latest projects and collaborations. My heart raced as I realized that my roommate was one of them, a rising star in a community that valued authenticity. I felt the weight of my dilemma pressing down on me. How could I expose her without risking my own reputation? I needed to gather more intel before I made my move. The evening wore on, and I finally mustered the courage to approach her. I walked up, my heart pounding, and greeted her with a smile that felt more like a mask. "Hey, great to see you here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She turned to me, her eyes sparkling with feigned innocence. "You too. I've been so busy with a new video series." The words hung in the air, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It was time to gather my evidence and prepare for the confrontation I had been dreading. As I stood there, feigning interest in her latest projects, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing me like a fiddle. The way she spoke about her newfound success felt rehearsed, like she was trying to sell me a narrative I wasn't buying. I glanced around the gathering, the vibrant laughter and chatter around us, contrasting sharply with the turmoil brewing inside me. My mind raced as I considered my next steps. It was time to tighten the noose of evidence around her. I decided to dig deeper, not just into her social media presence, but also into the network of connections she had built. I started to notice the subtle shifts in her interactions. She was more selective about who she spoke to and often seemed to be on her phone, scrolling through notifications with a nervous energy. The more I observed, the clearer it became that her viral success was not just a stroke of luck. She was strategically leveraging her connections, and I was determined to find out how far her manipulation extended. One evening, while I was scrolling through my own social media, I stumbled upon a comment from a mutual friend praising my roommate's latest video. The comment mentioned how brilliant her idea was, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't help but feel that my own creativity was being celebrated in a twisted way. I saved the post, knowing it could serve as a piece of evidence in the puzzle I was trying to assemble. As days turned into a week, I started gathering snippets of conversations and social media posts, trying to create a timeline of her actions. I noticed she had begun to collaborate with influencers I had once suggested to her, and each partnership seemed to align perfectly with her video releases. It was as if she was constructing a facade built on my ideas, while simultaneously distancing herself from any trace of originality. The more I pieced it together, the more infuriated I became. Late one night, I found myself awake, scrolling through her hidden account. I had accessed it through a mutual friend's profile, and the content was nothing short of a slap in the face. Video after video, each one echoed the concept I had shared with her, the ideas I had nurtured, all wrapped in her polished presentation. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief, and I knew I had to confront her with this evidence soon. But how could I do it without risking everything I had built? The stakes were rising, and I realized that if I didn't act soon, she might slip further into the limelight while I remained in the shadows. I started to think about how I could expose her without causing a scene. Maybe I could approach some of the influencers she was collaborating with, or perhaps I could leverage my own network to bring attention to the original idea. I needed to tread carefully. Any misstep could backfire spectacularly. I reached out to a few friends who had been supportive of my creative endeavors, casually mentioning my roommate's recent success and how similar it was to my own ideas. Their reactions were telling. Some expressed disbelief, while others hinted that they had noticed the parallels too. It felt good to have allies, but I knew I needed more than just whispers of doubt. I needed concrete proof, something that would force her to confront her own duplicity in a public forum. In the days that followed, I continued to document everything: her posts, her interactions, the way she seemed to pivot to avoid mentioning the origins of her ideas. I felt like a detective in my own life, piecing together a case that would either vindicate me or unravel her carefully constructed image. The pressure was mounting, and with each passing day, I felt the urgency of my situation grow. I couldn't let her continue to profit off my creativity without facing the consequences. Then, one afternoon, I received a message from an influencer who had previously collaborated with her. They expressed interest in discussing a potential partnership with me, intrigued by my original ideas. It was a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos, a chance to reclaim my narrative. But it also posed a risk. If I aligned myself with this influencer without addressing the elephant in the room, I could inadvertently draw attention to my roommate's duplicity, and that could backfire in ways I couldn't predict. I decided to meet with the influencer, hoping to gauge their perspective on my roommate's recent content. As we chatted over coffee, I carefully steered the conversation toward the similarities in our creative styles. To my surprise, they shared that they had heard murmurs about the originality of my roommate's ideas, and it only fueled my determination. I felt a surge of empowerment. I was no longer just a passive observer in this drama. The plan began to take shape in my mind. I would gather all the evidence I had collected and present it to the influencer, framing it as a collaborative opportunity. If they saw the truth behind my roommate's facade, it could shift the narrative entirely. But I also knew that I needed to be prepared for any fallout that might arise. The stakes were high, and I had to play my cards right. As I left the cafe, I felt a mix of anxiety and excitement coursing through me. I had set the wheels in motion, but the outcome was still uncertain. I was stepping into uncharted territory, and while I was ready to expose the truth, I couldn't help but wonder if it would lead to the recognition I sought or push me deeper into the shadows. The next few days would be crucial, and I had to stay sharp and focused. I spent sleepless nights drafting messages, creating timelines, and compiling screenshots of her posts and interactions. Each piece of evidence felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders, a step closer to reclaiming my voice. I knew that the next confrontation would be pivotal, not just for my own vindication, but also for the integrity of my ideas. I had to be ready for whatever came next. With each passing hour, the anticipation grew. I could feel the pressure building, like a tightly wound spring ready to snap. I was on the brink of something significant, and while I was terrified of the potential fallout, I was equally exhilarated by the prospect of finally confronting the truth. It was time to take back what was mine, and I was determined to do it with grace and conviction. With the evidence I'd gathered, I felt a sense of urgency coursing through me. I needed to be strategic about how I approached this next phase. My roommate, Claire, was smart, too smart to let her guard down easily. I decided to enlist the help of a couple of close friends who had been in my corner since this whole ordeal began. They knew the situation and were just as eager to see justice served, but I needed to be careful about how I revealed my plan to them. I reached out to Sarah and Mark, inviting them over for a casual dinner. I made sure to keep the atmosphere light, but I could feel the tension simmering beneath the surface. After dinner, I led them to my room, where I had compiled a digital folder of everything I had found. As I opened my laptop, I could see their eyes widen in disbelief. The screenshots, the timestamps, the videos, it was all there, meticulously organized to tell the story of Claire's betrayal. "This is insane," Sarah whispered, scrolling through the evidence. Mark leaned in closer, his brow furrowed. "You have to confront her with this," he urged. But I hesitated. The thought of a direct confrontation still terrified me. What if Claire turned the tables? What if she spun the narrative in her favor? I needed to gather more proof before I made any bold moves. What if we create a test? I suggested, a plan forming in my mind. We could stage a fake brainstorming session, talk about new ideas, and see if she tries to steal anything again. Both of them looked intrigued, and I felt a flicker of hope. If Claire was truly as opportunistic as I suspected, she wouldn't be able to resist the temptation of another idea. We could catch her in the act, and it would give me the leverage I needed to expose her. Over the next few days, we crafted an elaborate scheme. I wrote down several new concepts, ones that were completely different from the original video idea. We planned to meet at a cafe where I would casually drop hints about these new ideas, all while filming our conversation on my phone. If Claire reacted, we'd have the proof I needed to confront her publicly. I felt a mix of anxiety and excitement, the stakes higher than ever. The day of the meeting arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. I chose a cafe that Claire loved, hoping the familiarity would make her more relaxed. As I walked in, I spotted her already seated, scrolling through her phone. I took a deep breath and approached her table, plastering on a smile. "Hey, Claire, thanks for meeting me," I said, trying to sound cheerful despite the tension knotting my stomach. We exchanged pleasantries, and I could see the glimmer of ambition in her eyes as she talked about her recent success. I steered the conversation toward our upcoming meeting, casually mentioning the new ideas I had written down. Claire's interest peaked immediately, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. She leaned in closer, her expression shifting from casual to intensely focused. I activated my phone, subtly recording her every reaction. As I described a quirky concept involving urban adventures, I noticed Claire's eyes light up. "That sounds amazing. You should definitely do something with that," she said, almost too eagerly. I could feel my heart race. Was this it? Was she going to bite? I pressed on, introducing another idea about a social experiment, and watched as she scribbled down notes, her excitement palpable. It was like watching a predator hone in on its prey. After our meeting, I felt a rush of adrenaline. Claire had taken the bait, and I had the evidence I needed. I could already imagine the look on her face when I revealed everything. But a part of me was still uneasy. What if this backfired? What if Claire had a counter-strategy up her sleeve? I decided to share the recordings with Sarah and Mark, who were just as eager to see how this would unfold. That evening, we gathered at my apartment, and I played the recordings for them. Each gasp and exclamation from my friends fueled my resolve. "This is it," Mark said, his voice steady. "You have her right where you want her." I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration wash over me. The confrontation was drawing closer, and I knew I had to stay focused. I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment now. But as the night wore on, doubts crept in. I found myself staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events in my mind. What if Claire had already anticipated my moves? What if she was preparing to turn the narrative against me? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking a tightrope, one misstep away from losing everything. I had to be ready for anything. The following day, I decided to take a different approach. Instead of waiting for Claire to make a move, I would start talking to some of her sponsors. I needed to plant the seeds of doubt before I made my final move. If I could get them on my side, it would only strengthen my position when the confrontation happened. I reached out to a few of them, framing my concerns as general inquiries about their partnership with Claire. As I gathered more information, I realized that Claire had been living a lie, presenting a polished image that was far from the truth. The more I learned, the more determined I became. I could feel the walls closing in on her, and it fueled my desire to expose her deception. I just needed to wait for the right moment to strike, and I was getting closer every day. With each passing hour, the anticipation grew. I could feel the pressure building, like a tightly wound spring ready to snap. I was on the brink of something significant, and while I was terrified of the potential fallout, I was equally exhilarated by the prospect of finally confronting the truth. It was time to take back what was mine, and I was determined to do it with grace and conviction. The night before the gathering, I barely slept, my mind racing with every detail I had gathered. I had the evidence, the hidden account screenshots, and a plan to expose my roommate's deception. Yet, as I lay there, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this was more than just about my idea. It was about trust, betrayal, and the end of a friendship I had valued. I needed to brace myself for the inevitable fallout. Morning came, and the atmosphere in our apartment felt suffocating. My roommate was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface, scrolling through her phone, likely checking the likes on her latest video. Each notification was a reminder of the success she had stolen from me, and it made my stomach churn. I had to remind myself that I was doing this for my own integrity, not out of spite, but it was hard to separate the two. As I got ready, I replayed the plan in my head. I would wait until the gathering was in full swing, surrounded by friends and acquaintances who had only seen the glamorous side of my roommate. The moment she began to bask in the spotlight, I would unveil the truth. The idea of standing in front of everyone, revealing her hidden account, sent a thrill of adrenaline through me, but also a wave of nausea. Would they believe me? Would they turn against me instead? Arriving at the venue, I felt the weight of anticipation pressing down on me. The laughter and chatter of our friends filled the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I spotted my roommate across the room, her smile bright and infectious, completely unaware of the reckoning that awaited her. My heart raced as I noticed a few of our mutual friends already gathering around her, praising her for her latest viral success. Each compliment felt like a dagger in my side. I took a deep breath and reminded myself of the evidence I had collected. The screenshots of her secret account were saved on my phone, a digital testament to her betrayal. I had also gathered testimonials from others who had witnessed our original conversation about the idea. It was all there, a damning case waiting to be presented. I just needed to find the right moment to drop the bomb. As the evening wore on, I engaged in small talk, pretending everything was normal while my mind raced with the impending confrontation. I could see my roommate's confidence grow with each compliment, and I felt a pang of guilt for what I was about to do. But then I remembered how she had brushed off my feelings when I first confronted her about the video. That moment of denial had sealed my resolve. I couldn't let her walk away unscathed. Finally, as she began to tell a story about her rise to fame, I felt the moment was right. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest, and called for everyone's attention. The chatter faded, and I could feel the eyes of our friends on me. Curiosity mingled with confusion. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their gazes, and started to speak, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I need to talk about something important, I began, locking eyes with my roommate. You all know how talented she is, but what you don't know is that her success comes at a cost, my idea. I shared it with her in confidence, and instead of supporting me, she took it and monetized it without a second thought. The gasps from the crowd were immediate, and I could see my roommate's expression shift from surprise to anger. I continued, I have proof. I found her hidden account where she's been profiting from my idea, and I have screenshots to show you all. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking slightly as I navigated to the evidence. The room buzzed with whispers, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. There was no turning back now. I had to see this through. As I displayed the screenshots on my phone, the murmurs grew louder. Friends leaned in, scrutinizing the images, and I could see the shock etched on their faces. My roommate's facade began to crack, her confident demeanor faltering as the reality of the situation sank in. This isn't what it looks like, she shouted, her voice trembling, but the denial felt hollow in the face of the evidence. I pressed on, my voice unwavering. You all know how passionate I am about creating content. I trusted her with my idea, and she betrayed that trust for her own gain. This isn't just about a video. It's about integrity and honesty. I wanted to share my vision with her, and instead, she used it to build her brand. I could feel the tension in the room, thick and palpable as everyone processed the revelation. My roommate tried to regain control of the narrative, insisting it was a coincidence, but the doubt in her voice only fueled the crowd's skepticism. I watched as some of our friends began to distance themselves from her, their expressions shifting from admiration to disappointment. The atmosphere had changed. The once celebrated star was now a figure of controversy. It was a sight I had both dreaded and anticipated. In that moment, I felt a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. I had finally exposed the truth, but at what cost? I had lost not only a friend, but a part of my trust in people. As the crowd began to voice their opinions, some defending her and others supporting me, I knew the fallout would be far-reaching. This was only the beginning, and the real consequences of her actions were yet to unfold. With the crowd buzzing, I took a step back, my heart still racing. I had delivered my truth, but now I had to brace myself for the aftermath. Will my roommate apologize? Would she try to spin this in her favor? I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me as I prepared for whatever came next, knowing that the next few moments would change everything for both of us. As I looked around the room, I could see the lines being drawn. Friends were choosing sides, and I could feel the shift in the air. I had opened Pandora's box, and there was no closing it now. I would have to stand my ground, regardless of the consequences. I had fought hard to reclaim my narrative, and now it was time to see how it all played out. The room was electric with tension as I stood there, my heart racing. My voice trembled as I faced my roommate, now exposed in front of our friends. The evidence I had gathered felt heavy in my hands, like a weight I was finally ready to lift. You've been lying to all of us, and it's time everyone knew the truth. I declared, my resolve solidifying. The faces around me shifted from curiosity to disbelief. My roommate's expression morphed from smug confidence to panic, her facade cracking under the pressure. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, but I could see the sweat forming on her brow. The crowd was beginning to murmur, and I knew I had to seize this moment. I pulled out my phone, navigating to the hidden account I had discovered. I displayed the screen, showing her monetized videos, her comments praising her originality, and the sponsorships she had secured. "This isn't just a coincidence, is it? You took my idea and made it yours," I shouted, feeling the adrenaline course through me. Gasps erupted from the crowd, and I could see some friends stepping back, unsure of where to place their loyalty. My roommate's eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but there was none. "It's not what you think. I had my own ideas," she pleaded, but her voice lacked conviction. I pressed on, fueled by the validation of the crowd's reaction. I had spent weeks collecting screenshots, messages, and timestamps, all of which painted a clear picture of her deception. "You've been profiting off my creativity while pretending to be my friend," I continued, my voice steady now. Each word felt like a release, a cathartic unburdening of the anger and hurt I had held inside for so long. The realization began to sink in for those around us. Friends exchanged glances, and the atmosphere shifted from confusion to outrage. I could see the wheels turning in their minds, processing the betrayal. I had never intended for this to become a public spectacle, but I knew I couldn't let her get away with it any longer. As I spoke, I noticed some people pulling out their phones, likely recording the confrontation. My heart raced at the thought of this moment being shared online, but I pushed the fear aside. This was my truth, and I deserved to be heard. I felt a surge of empowerment. I was no longer the victim, but a woman reclaiming her narrative. My roommate's facade was crumbling, her bravado replaced by desperation. "You're ruining everything," she yelled, her voice rising above the murmurs. I worked hard for this. The irony of her statement was not lost on me. She had built her success on my back, and now she was facing the consequences of her actions. I could see a few friends step forward, clearly shaken by the revelation. "I can't believe you would do this, Sarah," one of them said, her voice laced with disappointment. I could feel the tide turning, the loyalty I once thought was unwavering beginning to shift. It felt surreal to watch my roommate's world unravel in real time. As she struggled to defend herself, I could see the sponsorship deals and partnerships she had secured flashing through her mind. The implications of her betrayal were sinking in, not just socially, but financially. I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. I had once considered her a sister, and now I was witnessing her downfall. The murmurs grew louder, and I could hear snippets of conversations. People were talking about how they felt misled, how they had supported her without knowing the truth. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their support surrounding me. This was more than just my fight. It was about integrity and honesty. I glanced at my roommate one last time, searching for any hint of remorse. Instead, I found anger and defiance. "You'll regret this," she hissed, but I felt no fear. I had already faced my demons, and now it was her turn to confront the reality she had created. I turned away from her, feeling the warmth of camaraderie from my friends. As the gathering began to disperse, I felt a mix of emotions. I had exposed the truth, but the cost of that truth weighed heavily on my heart. I didn't want to lose friendships, but I knew I couldn't compromise my integrity. I had fought for my voice, and I was determined to reclaim my space in this world. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift. My roommate's social media presence began to crumble, sponsorships pulled out, and her followers questioned her authenticity. I received messages of support from friends and even strangers who had seen the confrontation online. I felt a surge of empowerment as I began to rebuild my own platform, sharing my creative journey without her shadow looming over me. While I didn't revel in her downfall, I found solace in the newfound opportunities that came my way. Collaborations emerged, and I felt a sense of purpose in my work again. It was a bittersweet victory. I had lost a friend, but gained a community that valued honesty and creativity. I realized that sometimes standing up for oneself meant making tough choices. Reflecting on the experience, I learned that betrayal could lead to unexpected growth. I was no longer just a creative spirit. I was a woman who had faced adversity and emerged stronger. My journey was far from over, but I felt ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing I had the courage to fight for my ideas and my worth. As I looked around at the supportive faces of my friends, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I had found my voice, and it resonated with those who mattered. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative. I was ready to move forward, not just as a survivor, but as a creator who would no longer be silenced. Thanks so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed our videos, please like, share, and subscribe to the Llama if you want more drama. It truly means a lot. Looking back, I realized that confronting Jenna was just the beginning of my journey. It wasn't just about her. It was about creating a culture where everyone felt safe and valued. I wanted to be part of a community that thrived on transparency and support, where manipulation and deceit had no place. This was my chance to help shape a better future for our startup. As I stood at the window, watching the sunset over the city, I felt a wave of hope wash over me. I knew the scars of this experience would remain, but they would serve as reminders of the importance of authenticity. I took a deep breath, ready to embrace the next chapter of my life, one where I could advocate for others and ensure that the truth always prevailed. Thanks so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed our videos, please like, share, and subscribe to the Llama if you want more drama. It truly means a lot.